This is Caring for Kids on News Talk 760 WJR, presented by the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation. And here's your host, President and CEO of the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation, Larry Burns.
Thanks, Mark, and hello, everybody, and welcome to Caring for Kids. I'm your host, Larry Burns. We've got a great show planned for you tonight, discussing issues impacting children locally, regionally, and nationally. We're going to start off with Awenate Cobbina from the Detroit Pistons. He is Business Affairs and Associate Counsel for Palace Sports and Entertainment for the Detroit Pistons. And he's also Executive Director of the Pistons Foundation. Ron Fournier, Crane's Detroit Business Editor and Publisher. Ed Duggan, Chief Recruitment Officer for Youth Summer Employment for the Downtown Detroit Partnership. And it's all coming up next on Caring for Kids, here on the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR.
It's Caring for Kids with Larry Burns.
Welcome back, everybody. Larry Burns here, and we have a great lineup this evening, and we're going to start with Awenate Cobbina. Hopefully I did okay with that.
You did great, Larry.
Thank you. A little bit about Awenate. He's Business Affairs and Associate Counsel for Palace Sports and Entertainment for the Detroit Pistons, as well as the Executive Director of the Detroit Pistons Foundation. He served almost 6 years in the Obama White House, including roles in the Chief of Staff Office, Office of Legislative Affairs, and the Office of Management and Budget, all very important offices. Awenate attended Emory University and the Howard University School of Law, and also previously worked at the National Football League and the National Labor Relations Board in legal and policy roles. Well, welcome to Caring for Kids.
Thank you for having me.
We're delighted that you're here in the studio, and as I understand it, you, too, are relatively new to Detroit.
I am.
Based on what I just read and your great background. And can you tell our listeners a little bit about your career path, and in particular, what the experience was like working for President Obama?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I've been very lucky to be able to have a number of great work experiences and have worked for a few great people as well. And I grew up in Washington, D.C., but went to Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia for college. Then after college, like most late people in their late 20s or early 20s, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. So I worked at a law firm for about 3 years and took that time to travel and explore. And I realized that there were two consistent things in my career and in my personal life, actually, which was I was paid attention and read about and was interested in politics and sports, which led me after law school to the National Football League's headquarters in New York, as well as Senator Harry Reid's office on Capitol Hill in the Senate when he was majority leader, and then finally to the White House with President Obama. I think part of the great thing about growing up in Washington, D.C. is not only the access to the federal government and the related resources, but the number of free educational opportunities, whether it's art galleries or museums for people that are interested in those sorts of things. You get to learn a lot, and I really took that opportunity and was a self-starter in figuring out what I wanted to do. Obviously, the most noteworthy of those is probably the White House and working for the president. That opportunity was great. You listed the offices that I was in over the course of 6 years, but I really believe, and this is up to and including the president, who's obviously the ultimate boss there, I was able to work with some of the smartest, hardest working, most selfless people in all of the world, and I'm grateful for that. And they've been great mentors to me, great teammates, and helped me get to everywhere, learn the things I needed to learn to get where I needed to get. Yeah.
So I have to assume that some of those relationships over the 6 years are going to be relationships that you keep for the rest of your career in life.
Absolutely. I talk to a friend from the White House probably every day. The good thing about being in, or one of the good things about being in Detroit, is that it's an important area to not just the region, but also to the country. So people are interested in what's going on here. They're interested in everything from the Pistons move to what's going on downtown, what's going on in the neighborhoods, how it's affecting the state. It's kind of a high-profile area in the country right now. So I get a lot of inquiries from people that are curious. I get a lot of visitors from people I used to work with, and awesome. Get to work with some of them to this day.
Great. We're talking with Awenate Cobbina from the Detroit Pistons and Palace Sports. And so you've had a great background that we've talked about, and certainly we could probably talk about your experience at the White House all for the whole interview. But we want to talk about what you're doing now at Palace Sports and your sort of multi-dimensional role. So can you explain a little bit about what you're doing?
Sure. So primarily I support the business affairs and legal departments there, which, as you probably could guess, we're involved in all aspects of the move to Detroit, right. Whether it's the improvements that are taking place at Little Caesars Arena on the construction side to support NBA quality basketball and the Pistons, or if it's the construction of our practice facility and headquarters in conjunction with Henry Ford Health System in New Center. Through that role, I've been able to interface with a lot of the governmental agencies, mayor's office, the jobs and economy team, planning department, as well as the city council and some of the various community groups. And lastly, and probably most importantly to me is, or most satisfying to me, is the ability to serve as the executive director of the Pistons Foundation, where we get to work with great organizations like the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation.
Great. And we've had a couple of great meetings, and we're hoping to do some things together. And one of the first things I learned when we chatted the first time is the Piston Foundation, much like the Children's Hospital Michigan Foundation, is going through some strategic changes, not only moving into Detroit, but also strategically. And so I think our listeners would love to hear about that.
Sure, absolutely. So when Tom Gores bought the team about 4 years ago, he has a phrase that's all around our office called saying being impactful. Being impactful in business, being impactful in the community. So over the past 2 years, a little more than a year and a half actually, we've invested more than almost $2 million in various groups in the Metro Detroit area with a concentration on Detroit. When our vice chairman, Arn Tellem, joined a year ago, we did a strategic analysis of where we were giving and decided to focus on bigger grants to organizations that needed help scaling up and that were being already impactful in the community. So whether it's funding a youth basketball league with the Detroit Police Athletic League, helping to renovate the community center at State Detroit Place Center on the east side of Detroit, doubling the scholarship that we give for our Black History Month scholarship competition from $25,000 a year to $50,000 a year. We've been looking for opportunities to be impactful in the city.
Wow, that's impressive. So one of the really nice things about the Pistons moving to the metropolitan or the Detroit area is not only is it involved Little Caesars Arena, but also in the next year or two the New Center area, and so that's sort of a double whammy, and as it relates to economic development. And can you tell us a little bit about both?
Sure, absolutely. Well, we've been focused around three pillars with both our move to the arena and our move to our headquarters to New Center. So the first one is the fans. We've had some great fans for the entire time that the Pistons have been in the Detroit area, including at the Palace. There's been some great moments there. There was 3 championships, and we understand that a lot of our fans, whether they also go to Red Wings games or Tigers games or Lions, are used to coming downtown as a central gathering place. And as you know, there are lots of restaurants and bars and things that have congregated around those stadiums. So this will be helpful to the fans to get them to a more central location. People that aren't fans but still live in Detroit, we think that this will, we touched on impact in the previous answer, but I think that this is an opportunity for us to be impactful in Detroit. We've seen what's going on. We haven't been as much of a part of it as we'd want to be or as our ownership would want to be, and we are looking forward to that opportunity to do so. We went through the community engagement process before signing the agreements to move downtown, and whether it's developing 60 basketball courts over the next few years or contributing to workforce development programs, we're definitely looking for ways to be involved with people that aren't basketball fans but still live in the city of Detroit. And lastly, it'll help our business and our franchise. The way the organization is currently set up, we have our headquarters in the Palace, but our practice facility is across the parking lot. So the two sides of our organization don't get to talk frequently or interact or there's not the sense of unity that you would want in a business and for morale purposes. So this building will not only house our practice facility, but it'll house our headquarters and have all 150, 160 employees in one place where we can make sure that everyone's interacting, marketing's talking to community relations, exactly, talking to players. So
well, with that and what you're doing with the foundation and the community, and hopefully working with us as it relates to kids in the community, we're very fortunate that the Detroit Pistons is coming here.
So can't wait.
And we're very fortunate that you're not in Washington anymore, but you're here in Detroit.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
So thank you very much. And one last quick question is, how do the Pistons look on the court this year?
Oh, the Pistons are going to be good. Our president, Stan Van Gundy, and our general manager, Jeff Bauer, have been working hard, not only on transactions to bring new players in, but on working with the current players. So from all I've heard, Andre Drummond and Stanley Johnson have had great off seasons. We look to improve our three-point shooting. So we acquired Avery Bradley from the Boston Celtics, who, as you probably know, had a great season last year on the offensive and defensive sides, and drafted Luke Kennard in this season and Henry Ellison last season. So we're looking forward to a great year to open up Little Caesars.
And I got to believe the players are excited about playing in a new arena in a downtown area with those fans.
Absolutely. They live near the Palace because that's where the practice facility is.
Makes perfect sense.
They've taken the opportunity to get to know Detroit a little more, and hopefully they'll continue to do so on an increasing basis.
Great. Go Pistons, and we'll check in once the season gets started.
Absolutely. Thanks for having
me. Thank you very
much.
And coming up next, we're going to hear from Ron Fournier of Cranes Detroit. That's when Caring for Kids continues here on the great voice of the Great Lakes. News Talk 760 WJR.
Welcome back to Caring for Kids on WJR, presented by the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Larry Burns here. We got a great show tonight on Caring for Kids on WJR. Our next guest in the studio is Ron Fournier. Ron is publisher and editor for Cranes Detroit Business. Prior to joining Cranes in September of 2016, Ron was an award-winning editor and political writer in Washington, where he served as columnist for The Atlantic, editor-in-chief of the National Journal, and Washington bureau chief for the Associated Press. That was during the Clinton, Bush, and Obama presidencies. He's a former White House correspondent. Ron began his 20-year AP career in Little Rock, Arkansas, covering the then-governor, Bill Clinton, in the 1980s and 90s. Ron, welcome to Caring for Kids.
Thank you, and thank you for reading that exactly how I wrote it for you.
Exactly. Well, it's very impressive. And most importantly, that we're glad that you're in Detroit.
I am having such a great time to be back. It took too long to get back, and we're just loving it. It's a great time to be here.
It is. And I, too, returned, as you know. I was gone 27 years, and so...
welcome back.
Thank you. And we met and talked about some of the similarities we had growing up. And so can you tell our listeners a little bit about... your career path and maybe a little bit about your background that I didn't tell them.
Sure.
Because it's all very interesting.
I grew up on the northeast side at 7 Mile and Hayes. My father was a police officer. Mother was a homemaker. And I was raised in the same block that Mom and Dad were raised on. They were literally childhood sweethearts. My grandparents were best friends. In 1985, when I graduated from the University of Detroit, I could not find a job in journalism anywhere at all, anywhere in the state, even though I'd worked for free for just about every weekly in the metro area. But when it came to them having to pay me, they didn't think I was good enough, and they were right. Through a connection at the University of Detroit, a great school, I got an offer in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Went down there and covered cops and courts, which is the old-fashioned way of breaking into journalism.
Right, of course it is.
And, if you can get a cop to tell you something at a crime scene, you can get anybody to open up.
Right.
And did that for a couple of years, and then moved to Little Rock through the newspaper chain, and found myself covering the state legislature and the governor. And it was this young man, about 38, 39 years old, who I'd never heard of, Bill Clinton. And I chased him around the state capitol, extremely accessible and active governor for about 7 years. And then when he was promoted by the people of America, they, without knowingly, unwittingly, promoted me to Washington. The Associated Press transferred me effectively with him. So I went to Washington to cover him and stuck around for 20 years and finally got ourselves home. My wife is also from the area. She grew up in Garden City.
Yeah, awesome. I have to ask you about Bill Clinton. One of the things I've heard from my friends like Paul W. Smith and others, that he has this terrific talent to make people feel that he's known you, and that when he's talking to you, that you're the only thing in the world. Is that something you experienced too?
Oh, yeah. His first 5 minutes are incredible. I'll never forget the first time I met him. It was in 1985. I just moved down to Hot Springs, and they sent me to cover the governor, who was in town from Little Rock. He says, "Where are you from? You're obviously not from around here." You could tell from my accent. I says, "Detroit, northeast side, Gratiot, 8 Mile area." He says, "Oh, yeah, that's right over there by, you got Harper Woods in Macomb County, not too far north of there. Isn't there that restaurant with a clock on it over by that freeway?" And he starts breaking down the neighborhood politically better than I knew. He starts talking about Reagan Democrats, and
Oh my!
And he did. Yeah, I felt in that moment that I was the most important person he'd ever met.
Yeah. So, welcome back to Detroit. We're delighted that you're here, and welcome. Your role at Cranes. A lot of things going on there, and can you talk about some new developments going on at Cranes Detroit, or in Cranes in general?
Yeah, the first thing we did was take a look at the newsroom, how it was structured, and how could we line it up with our mission. And our job is to try to help business leaders and businessmen and women in this part of the state succeed. And we realized one thing: we weren't really broad enough. We were not the one place shop for anything going on in business coverage in Southeast Michigan, and nobody really was. And if not us, who? So we stood up a young team of really aggressive young reporters, managed by a veteran wire service / online editor, someone who really knows how to move copy quick. And we said, your guys' job is to cover all the breaking news, any developments of the day, whether we're covering it or our competition is. Because my audience doesn't care where they get important information from, whether they get it from the Free Press, the news, or us. But we want to be the place they come to, even if we drive them off our site.
Right.
So we did that. We stood up that team, and that took a lot of load off of our beat reporters, who up until last year were all assigned to more than 5, 6, sometimes more beats. Well, you can't become an expert on something if you're asked to be an expert on 6 things.
Right.
So we said, from now on, it's a 1-beat rule. Get to know the people in your beat. Get to know the subject matter better than anybody else. Be able to do really deep enterprise, we call it in the business, enterprise reporting, that is so good, so well thought out, so well sourced that it's going to either provoke new thinking. I never thought of this like that before, or new action. It has somebody shift around their investments, or hire or lay off people, or think of their business anew. And that's the bar we're now aiming for. We're going to give you all the breaking news that's happening,
Do it well.
wherever you want it, on your mobile phone, on your laptop, in the paper at the end of the week. And we're going to give you enterprise that makes a difference. And of course, we have that signature platform. Every Monday is the newspaper, but that's just one of them.
Right. And I'm telling you, I look at my phone. First thing I do when I get up in the morning is look at the phone, and there's usually several new things from Cranes Detroit Business, several new tweets from Ron Fournier that gets me right up to speed at 5, 6 o'clock.
Well,
in the
thanks.
morning.
I love your Twitter feed too.
Right,
The other thing
thank
we're
you.
doing is building partnerships with people like you, and with enterprises as great as yours. We can't succeed unless we all succeed together. So I really appreciate being on this show and the work we're doing together to try to help other
Absolutely.
enterprises.
And so for our listeners, that starting in September, we're going to have a great partnership with Ron and his team at Cranes Detroit Business, promoting this show.
Sure.
Promoting the show, and most importantly, promoting the guests on the show and the messages that they have about Detroit and about Michigan, and in our case, about kids. And so the resurgence of Detroit that we read about and that we experience all the time, is that impacted Cranes as well?
Yeah. First of all, as the tide rises, any business is going to be lifted by it. So a business publication should figure a way to benefit from a better business environment. Then again, we have the same anchor. The fact that not everybody's boat has risen yet in the city, and there are a lot of neighborhoods that haven't even been touched. That's something Cranes has to help be a part of the solution of, so that we can grow new audiences and be part of a vibrant community. Journalistically, that's the business side.
Yes,
Journalistically,
right.
Holy moly, can you think of a better place to be a journalist?
No,
I mean,
no.
think about my career. I spent the last 20 years in Washington covering dysfunction and decay.
Right.
Here, I'm covering a community that for the first time in my lifetime, and believe it or not, Larry, I was born in 1963, not 83. First time in my lifetime, the business community, the political community, and the cultural community are working together to try to bring the city back.
Yeah.
And actually not bring it back, to try to make it better than it ever was. That's a fun story to cover.
That is. Every day there's new things. And
exactly.
One of the things I love the best about your Twitter feeds, because that's primarily where I'm getting my day-to-day news from Cranes, is the stories about new economic development, new businesses coming to the Fisher Building, and things like that. And more to come. And so I'm a big believer that in today's world, integrating messages is important for our foundation. I did that at the University of Toledo. And one of the things that has impressed me working with you and your colleagues is you listen to me about, boy, I want my message to be integrated, print, social media, maybe an event or two. And so is that a strategic direction also for Cranes?
Yes, in two ways. One, we realize the importance of relationships. So we try not to come to you and say, here's the 8 things that we want you to buy.
Right.
We try to come and say, what is your problem?
Yes.
How can we help you solve it?
Right.
And if there's a way that we can find a win-win where we can do an event, or we can do a piece of native advertising, or a display ad, or me appearing on your show.
Right.
If there's a way that and you know, the favors you've done for us, I think your audience is going to find it surprising that we had a retreat recently for all of Cranes around the country, their sales staff, and we need somebody to kind of do a dry run, kind of like a mock presentation, and Larry was kind enough to come in and help train our staff, in effect. That's the kind of thing that is it's good for business to have a relationship where it's not transactional, but how can we make each other richer, not just monetarily, but in our businesses? How can we make our working lives better together?
Yeah, said so well. And it's about partnerships, and I know that some people don't believe that they're more transactional, but what we're developing is a partnership, and I look forward to it. And so I know Detroit Homecoming, because when I was in Toledo, I was part of being invited back, and was very excited about that. Now that I'm home, I know that continues. So I know that you're planning for the next one, and I think there's a kind of a special location for that. Yeah,
this is Mary Kramer's baby, and she's bringing it to new levels this year, the 4th year. I would not be here without Homecoming. When my wife and I decided that we wanted to move back to Detroit, I didn't know how to network for a new job. I didn't know what I'd want to do, who might want to hire me. So I came to the first Homecoming, and then I came to the second Homecoming. And among the great people I met was Mary Kramer.
Right.
And she asked me, and Casey Crane, the owner of Cranes, the president of Cranes, asked me to join them in their efforts. So Mary has transitioned into a role where she's mainly focused on just big projects like Homecoming. And so this year she's bringing Homecoming to the train station, to the for you and I who have been outside of Detroit, loving it from afar, we saw the train station as kind of the emblem of ruin porn.
Yeah,
it was always held up as the iconic problem.
It was the picture in the Wall Street Journal when they wrote about
shamefully, disgracefully. Yeah. Now it's they've replaced all the buildings there. The Maroons have.
Right.
They're looking for tenants. It's a beautiful building that we're going to showcase at Homecoming, and I hope we can help the Maroons bring some business to it. And really, what a great thing for them to allow us to use this beautiful landmark right down there in Corktown. And it's going to be a great place to kick off Homecoming. We're also moving the events. It's a 3-day event, as you know.
Yes.
The big thing I think this year is we're moving them into the neighborhoods. We're gonna use this brand and these 300 and some well-to-do, well-plugged-in expats.
Right.
We're going to bring them into neighborhoods that there's seeds of progress, and we need some fertilizer. We need some ignition, some momentum behind what's already begun. So we think that's one way. Mary thinks that's one way Homecoming can help, is by getting the expats out in the neighborhoods.
Yeah, absolutely, and I know it's already paid off for people that come back and say, I didn't know that such things were going on in my hometown in this case, and so I commend you and Mary and Keith and Casey and for what you're all doing. And
thank you for mentioning Keith, the chairman of the board, and one of the founders of Homecoming, Keith Crane and Mary Kramer and Jim Hayes.
Yes, so thank you for all you're doing for your hometown. We're glad you're back, and this partnership that I mentioned, that you mentioned, is going to take this radio show, Caring for Kids, to a new level thanks to Crane's Detroit Business.
It's a great show. Anytime I can be on, you let me know.
All righty. Thanks, Ron.
Take care, sir.
All righty. It's Ron Fournier from Crane's Detroit Business. He's the editor and publisher. And coming up next, we're going to speak to Ed Duggan of the Downtown Detroit Partnership when Caring for Kids continues, right here on the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR.
Welcome back to Caring for Kids on WJR, presented by the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation. Once again, here's Larry Burns.
Ed Duggan is Chief Recruitment Officer of Youth Summer Employment for the Downtown Detroit Partnership. Prior to joining the Downtown Detroit Partnership, Ed worked for local business Belfour, performing similar recruitment work in the business community. And he was also the Director of Campaign Coordination for his father's mayoral campaign, and that turned out well. Currently, he serves on the Advocacy Advisory Board for Michigan State University. He also previously served on the Livonia Zoning Board of Appeals. Ed is a graduate of Detroit Mercy School of Law and holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Michigan State University. Ed, welcome to Caring for Kids.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We're delighted that you're here, and we want to talk about several things. But I know that you're a proud Spartan, and we have our new partnership with MSU football and basketball, and we have a new promotion with them that we're starting to promote, and that's a Little Champion, so you'll hear more about that. But tell our listeners that are familiar maybe with your name, but aren't so familiar with your MSU time and your career path so far.
Yeah, so I actually graduated from Michigan State back in 2010. And started law school shortly thereafter.
It's not that far back.
Yeah, it's a few years. Yeah, it's amazing how fast time goes by.
It does go by.
And I started law school at Detroit Mercy back that fall in 2010, and decided I wanted to move back to Detroit and get involved in the city of Detroit. My father obviously moved back shortly thereafter, separate of my decision to go to law school at Detroit Mercy. Right. Right after I graduated from Detroit Mercy, I helped out at the campaign for mayor for a few months, and I started out at Balfour Property Restoration after the campaign ended. And I worked there for a couple years before I ended up at the Downtown Detroit Partnership with Cindy Paskey and Eric Larson, who are my bosses over at the Downtown Detroit Partnership.
Great. Well, I back 30 years ago, I worked for Bob Larson.
Okay.
When Bob was CEO of the Taubman Companies, and he was also the chairman of the Caring for Kids Capital Campaign for Children's Hospital, and I was running the campaign, and so he was a mentor of mine, and so that Larson family continues to be a factor in Detroit. Yeah,
they're a great family, aren't they?
They are. They certainly are. And so I arrived back in Detroit in January, and one of the first things that I wanted to do was to reach out to the mayor's office and indicate that our foundation is on a bit of a different path than we had been because we're no longer officially part of the hospital, and that we need to start supporting organizations and programs that help kids outside of the walls of the hospital. And so one of those conversations led to a grant for the Grow Detroit's youth program. And so we were delighted to give that program a grant recently. And then I said, well, if we're going to give a grant, we also have to have an intern during the student or during the summer. So we did that. And can you give our listeners a review of the program and maybe how it started, what it's doing now, and where you hope it goes?
Yeah, so it's called the Grow Detroit's Young Talent Program. It's a summer jobs program for Detroit youth, ages 14 to 24. And we essentially try to get as many young people jobs for 6 weeks in July and August as we can. Our goal this year was 8,000 young people. We ended up getting 8,127 young people jobs.
Yeah.
Yes. We were very excited about achieving our goals. And just to give you a sense of how far the program has come. So it originally started back in 2009. Okay. When the Obama administration passed the Stimulus Act, there was they provided funding for 7,000 summer jobs opportunities here in Detroit, and so they got 7,000 kids jobs in July and August. The program ended, and there was no more federal funding that was going to be coming for summer jobs. So Skillman Foundation, Kellogg Foundation, and Bank of America Foundation came together and said, we're going to try and get as many young people jobs the following year in 2010 as we possibly can. And they started to get corporations involved and get other foundations involved. And between 2010 and 2013, they would get about 3,000 kids jobs every summer.
3,000?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And then in 2014, the mayor's office got involved. By 2015, the mayor's office got involved for the first time and said we're going to make it a goal of 5,000 kids to get summer jobs. So they end up hitting their goal of 5,000 jobs, but 11,000 kids signed up. Wow. So in 2016, they decided to expand the amount of partners that they got involved in the program, and that's how the Downtown Detroit Partnership got involved.
All right. Okay.
And that's how Cindy Paskey and Eric Larson ended up hiring me. And in 2016, we made a goal of getting 8,000 kids jobs. We got another 8,100 kids jobs in 2016, and then we hit our goal again this year in 2017. So it kind of tells you how much the program has evolved over the last 8 or 9 years.
Yeah, and talking with Ed Duggan from Downtown Detroit Partnership, and we're talking specifically about the Grow Detroit's Young Talent Program. And so do you see, do you have the ability to keep growing, do you think, or...
You know, we may grow a little bit. I think what we're going to try and do next year is we'd like to provide more 40-hour-a-week opportunities for our young people, especially those who are 17 and 18 and older. The program goes up to 24 years old. So they can provide longer opportunities, work opportunities for those older people in the program. And we'd like to expand the amount of private companies that get involved. We have over 550 work sites who are involved this year. There's about 150 who are the private companies. We'd like to expand that and get more of them to hire young people directly into their program. I know DTE Energy has been a great partner this year and going forward and trying to get more companies to hire directly and expanding the amount of companies. So we're not just providing 6-week work opportunities. We're actually starting to build our workforce for the future and provide more career paths. So that's our long-term goal.
That's a great goal.
So I think we'll probably stick at 8,000, might go up a little bit, but I think trying to provide more workforce opportunities will be our real goal for going forward.
Great. And so this year, I mentioned we were involved not only giving a small grant, but also hiring our very own Alexis Bomar, who's in the studio, and she's been with us for 6 weeks. Alexis, hi.
Hi.
And Alexis is one of the older students, I would say, because she graduated from Oakland University.
Yep.
So tell our listeners a little bit about your experience and how it was working in the program.
Well, thanks for having me on the show. So I've been here for the past 6 weeks, and so far it's been great. So I'm kind of upset that it's over. But
so are we.
But I have to say I learned a lot with working with nonprofits and different organizations and kind of learning the ins and outs of what different organizations in Detroit do. I did different press releases and social media posts for the foundation, and that was kind of my first experience outside of Oakland University, and I think so far it's been great. So I don't know, it kind of sucks that it's all done. And I don't know what I'm gonna do.
My only complaint, which really isn't a complaint of the program, is I wish it was longer.
Yeah.
And so maybe it'll our relationship could lead into something else. So as Ed described, that really is their long-term goal, that their career pathways, not just summer jobs.
Exactly.
I always had a summer job that was never going to be my career. And so now what we're trying to do is create pathways so that young people have an opportunity to sort of test out their career and go in the direction that they want. How did you find out about the program?
So my younger brother and I, we actually applied last summer and did not get in the program.
Okay.
So we were like, okay, we're going to try it again this year.
Good. That's
and
good.
hopefully get in. And we both ended up getting into the program this summer. And we both ended up somewhere where we really enjoyed it. And my younger brother, he actually got offered a position to stay at his placement. So
wow.
they're going to keep him on.
Where's he at?
He's at a local grocery store in our neighborhood.
Okay.
So he just started there as a cashier. Carts and all that. And they're like, you're doing really good, so we're just going to keep you on. So
yeah. Is he in high school or college?
High school.
Yeah, all right.
Yep.
So. All right. Well, his older sister did a great job as well.
Thank you.
We're very proud of you. So, Ed, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is other things that the Detroit Partnership is doing, Downtown Detroit Partnership is doing. I did attend a breakfast a while ago that Eric Larson sort of reviewed some of the projects. It's pretty amazing stuff that they're all doing. Is there anything else in particular you want to mention?
Our biggest thing right now we're working on is these parks. I mean, obviously, I know you saw Beacon Park, the new DTE Energy Park opened a couple weeks ago.
Yet, but I got to check it out.
It's very cool. That's kind of been our Super Bowl for this year, has been the opening of that park. Got a restaurant opening up early next year there. So they've got activities and events there. I know we're working on Capitol Park right now. I have a study figuring out how to utilize Capitol Park. And I know they're trying to figure out how to deal with the Detroit Plaza. Is another park that just opened a month ago. and trying to figure out how do we
Is that the
utilize.
one on Woodward?
Yes, it's Woodward and right next to the city county building, right by the Spirit of Detroit. They're trying to create more public spaces here in the city, and make more walkable, and that's probably our big priority right now. So, how do we utilize public spaces going forward to bring people together is really a big goal of what we're working on right now.
So the last question is I got to put you on the spot. Do you think they're running for political offices in Ed Duggan's future?
No, I do not. I think it's a safe bet it's not. But I guess you never say never, but
All
no.
Right. We're going to record that, and then if you change your mind, we won't play it.
All right. We have a deal there then.
Yeah, we have a deal. You can change your mind. And so, well, thank you very much for what you're doing. We hope to get you involved a little bit in some way in our Michigan State stuff. And we hope, the foundation hopes to be a continual supporter of the youth program, which we promised when we gave you that smaller grant, and other things that we can do to help the mayor and the city and the kids of our community. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for having me. And thanks for everything you do to support the program.
Well, you're welcome, and it's a real pleasure. That was Ed Duggan, Chief Recruitment Officer for Youth Summer Employment for the Downtown Detroit Partnership, and Alexis Beaumont. We'll be right back.
It's Caring for Kids with Larry Burns.
A couple things I wanted to mention regarding the foundation. During the interview with Ron Fournier, I mentioned that we have a new partnership with Crane's Detroit Business. So look for more exposure of this show, Caring for Kids, on WJR 760 in Crane's Detroit, the printed piece, but also on social media starting in September. So thanks, Ron and team. We have a new partnership with a new entity called Music Town. That is actually on the second floor of Hockey Town. In the district, and so that will be publicly opening in September, and the foundation will have a presence there. We have a new way that you can get involved, and that is our Little Champion program, and this is to identify youngsters across the state or in Ohio or wherever they might be that from ages 5 to 12 that already have overcome some serious illness or other major obstacle in their young life. And so we want to nominate them. In each game of the MSU Spartans football season this year, a little champion will be honored. They will all be honored on the field on November 18th against Maryland. So all the winners will be showcased with their families. And so to nominate a youngster, it's very easy. You just go to chmfoundation.org/champion and join us next time at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, September 26th, for more discussion about the health and wellness of children on Caring for Kids, here on the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR.
Caring for Kids on WJR has been presented by the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation.